So, welcome to LiberalViewer First Wednesday Live. Sorry, a little bit, about 6 minutes delayed here. Was trying to get some screenshots of some questions. This is the live show I do on the first Wednesday of every month, and I answer all the viewers' questions that pile up over the previous month, or most of the questions were asked like in the last 24 hours. And then I also take live questions of the people who are joining me and watching. Let me see, let me refresh here. I hope I have some viewers. Can people see and hear me? Let me go over to my comment page here real quick before I start answering questions. Let me make sure. Okay, good. So I did have, I think, is it 5 questions here? Let me see. 6 questions that I did screenshots of before I started. As I said, I apologize. I'm a little bit late today because actually today I got to spend about an hour with a one-on-one, or actually 2-on-2 meeting with the Sacramento County Sheriff here in Sacramento where I live. As a representative of my local ACLU chapter, we went and got to ask a bunch of questions and find out what the sheriff thought, and the under-sheriff. I met with another member of my board, went and met the sheriff and the under-the-sheriff, so I was a little bit rushed getting back here for this, but I'm glad to see that people are joining up, and I'm going to do my best to stay on until I answer just about all the questions, or I run out of breath, or whatever happens here. So the first question I had, let me load up a question here real quick. I had a question from one of my most frequent questioners, Terry Alther, posted over on my Facebook page. Here, as long as I'm adding in questions, I might as well add in the first 3. So, come on, switch over. There you go. No. Oh, there we go. So Terry posted links to a few different videos, starting with retired Associate Justice of the Supreme Court David Souter talking to a bunch of scholars about problems with polarization in the American political system. I actually didn't get a chance to watch every single part in full because, like I said, I had some other stuff I had to do today. But I got the gist of it, I think. Basically, they were examining 4 different possible causes of the polarization in our political system. And, I mean, the premise was that, and you have to excuse me, I need to... The premise was that it's really bad for our constitutional system for there to be such polarization. It creates a lot of gridlock and things don't get done. And also it doesn't represent the American people. The American people aren't as politically polarized as the people in Congress are. And so they looked at 4 different possible causes of the polarization. One was gerrymandered districts. That's where, the districts that members of Congress and the House of Representatives run to represent are redrawn usually by the state legislatures. And that's going to be controlled by one party, especially if one party has the governorship and the state legislature. They're going to be able to draw districts to make it safe seats for their party. And actually, even both parties tend to make safe seats for incumbents. So it tends to make members of Congress more polarized. So that's the gerrymandering part. Then there is the political primary system. And this whole series was about unintended consequences, and they pointed out that the political primaries that choose our candidates in the United States, and at least that's the way it works in most states, and for most contests, was actually a way to make things more democratic and widen out. It used to be like these political bosses in the smoke-filled back rooms would decide who the candidates would be, but it turns out they were actually trying to choose people who were more moderate, who would appeal to a greater part of the electorate. And when we have political primaries now, which with not a lot of voter participation, it's really like the party diehards in the Republican and the Democratic parties who choose who the candidates are, and so that tends to polarize them. So that's the second possible thing that's polarizing. Another thing they were talking about was campaign finance, and that's kind of a big issue, and I've talked about that over and over again in my videos about, how the way that lobbyists and big money can fund campaigns, and that there's a disconnect between the people and the representatives. That also causes polarization. I'm trying to remember what the fourth factor they looked at that causes polarization. Well, like I said, I didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, but I would say that those are all good factors. On the first two I talked about there, here in California, and they mentioned this in one of the talks, we've changed our system so that we don't have the same kind of gerrymandering, and we also don't have the same kind of partisan political primaries. In terms of the gerrymandering, we actually have this like citizens commission that cuts up our congressional districts, and so it doesn't really have safe seats, and it doesn't favor partisan politics, or at least not as much. And there's actually been some more competitive contests since we started that system. And also in terms of political, the primary system here, we have a top two primary system, and I'm not sure that I actually like that so much, but in that case, anyone can run in the Republican primary, the Democratic primary, the Green Party primary, whatever, but the top two vote getters, even if they're both in the Democratic Party or both in the Republican Party, the top two vote getters in the June primary or whenever it is, they are the ones who run against each other in the general election. And in some ways that kind of squeezes out third parties, but most systems kind of squeeze out third parties. But I don't know, there are a lot of reasons for our partisan political system. And on the campaign finance, I think I've mentioned several times that I favor a public financing system where candidates get free airtime and public money to run their campaigns, and that it's a sufficient amount that they can get their message out and compete, even if someone comes in with a lot of their own money, because I think that there's a First Amendment right for someone to spend their own money to promote their own political campaign, and that's the whole basis of the independent expenditure rule. And I don't think you can really get rid of that, where like rich people can, no matter what system you come up with, I don't think you can, it's a violation of free speech if you're going to stop rich people from spending their own money, not to give donations directly to candidates. That I think you can regulate, because that gives the appearance of corruption, but for them to spend their own money buying ads, advocating their own political beliefs, even if that happens to benefit some candidate or another, as long as there's not coordination, that's kind of the rules these days. And I think there should be stricter rules about not being coordination between these independent groups and candidates, because the way it is now, like Bill Maher gave $1 million to Obama's PAC, and everyone knows that's Obama's PAC, and it's not really that independent. It's all run by like people who used to work for Obama or are going to work for Obama. So that's one of the problems that can be fixed, I think, without amending the Constitution. Anyway, I've already spent quite a few minutes answering that question, so I should probably get to the second question here. Came from Kyle Testic. I'm sorry, don't get as clear a view here. This is from Kylie Tastic UK. As an outsider from the UK, I'm confused how the situation with state law versus federal law works with regard to things like the marijuana legal status. It seems odd that in a state like Washington can say they have legalized it in opposition to federal law without hold on a second here. Without one of two things then happening: either that the state challenging the federal law, or the federal legislature is challenging the state law. How can the DEA actually raid dispensaries without having to legally challenge the state law in courts first? Well, I will answer this question, and I actually got a similar question. There are these movements to nullify state laws. There's some states that say, I think it was in Oklahoma, somewhere maybe it was Oklahoma or one of the Carolinas, where they're saying they're not going to enforce certain federal laws anymore. And that's a little different than what's happening with medical marijuana, because the medical marijuana laws don't nullify any federal laws. They just get rid of state criminal laws that make it illegal to possess marijuana, or there's some places where it's legalized, some places where you have to have a doctor's prescription and a medical card. But up until the around World War I, there weren't a lot of federal criminal laws, and I think the people who originally wrote the Constitution would be very surprised at how many federal criminal laws there are. Most of the criminal laws were left up to the states to decide, and the police power and enforcing criminal laws was something states were supposed to do, and so most criminal laws are state and don't involve the federal government. And that includes drug laws. Most people who are arrested for drug crimes are, possession of drugs, even sale of drugs. Mostly that's going to be by state police or local police, and not involve federal laws at all. And so when the states decide to get rid of those state laws that most people who commit drug crimes are prosecuted under, then that's a lot of enforcement that no longer happens. But there are still federal laws against interstate trafficking or having large amounts. There are all these justifications for why it's against federal law just in a state to have drugs. But there are these federal laws that prevent, that also criminalize possession and especially sale and transportation of drugs. And so those federal laws can still be enforced even in states that have gotten rid of their state laws against those drug crimes. And in fact, when the federal government comes in, they can use federal police like the FBI to come in, but in most of those situations they use local police to come with them, even when there's no state law against it. Some local jurisdictions go so far as to forbid their local police from participating with federal agents in enforcing federal drug laws, but that's pretty rare. Most of the time when the federal agents go, the DEA and the FBI go in to enforce federal drug laws, they bring in local cops with them too, even in places where there's no state law being violated. So I think I answered that question. So let me go to the third one here. Oh, this is not a question I think I'm really going to be answered. This is from Tommy Trosper. Says, I have multiple sclerosis and narrow jugular veins. If I did not have MS, I would be able to get treatment for the stenosed veins, but since I have MS, no one will treat me. Would that be a violation of my rights to proper health services? Well, I can't really give you legal advice on that one. When I got that comment, I happened to be sitting next to my wife, who's a physician, and I kind of said, is this a violation of rights, or is this like a medical contraindication? And I also can't give you medical advice, but from our conversation, I got the idea that maybe the reason you can't get that other condition treated is because of the great risk of injury because of your other condition, and it's not like a violation of your rights. It's like a medical judgment. But I don't know. I can't treat you over the internet, and I'm not a doctor, and I really don't know the answer to your legal question either, but that's the best I can do. I try to go through especially all the questions people ask me beforehand and try to get to those. I think I have 3 more to add in here real quick that were asked beforehand, and then I'll get to the live questions. Because I see I do have a bunch of people watching at the moment, it looks like, which is good. So yeah, the 4th question here from Sean F. asked, to what extent has the rise in no-knock warrants, talk of gun restrictions, spying revelations, and TSA search evidence of a growing security state where civil liberties are sacrificed for safety? Well, I'm taking a little drink here. I think excuse me, I answered a kind of similar question on a previous episode about whether I thought the United States was a police state, and my answer then was that I don't think it's a police state now, but it is definitely moving in that direction. One of the problems is that there was kind of a golden age of the protection of civil liberties by the courts, and especially in the criminal justice context, that started in well, I mean, as early as the 20s, but sort of building up through like the 60s and the 70s, and then it kind of stopped around the time of Ronald Reagan. One of his accomplishments as a politician was to politicize the Supreme Court in a way that it hadn't really been politicized in previous years, with the whole Robert Bork nomination, and that was actually stopped by Ted Kennedy in the Senate. But you basically using the abortion issue first, but then talking about liberal activist judges and building on, there's this the angry white guys in the South, and there was this whole John Birch Society movement to impeach Earl Warren, who was the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court for a while, and his court was kind of emblematic of the increase in civil liberties and criminal justice civil liberties particularly. And then with Reagan and the Reagan-Bush years, and even somewhat in the Clinton years, there was a little bit of, because the president appoints all the federal judges, and so there are 12 years there after Reagan politicized the courts, when he started appointing these like conservative judges who stopped a lot of the expanse in civil liberties. And there was a little bit of a respite in the Clinton years, but not completely. I mean, he was definitely not a liberal, especially when it came to crime issues. And I don't know, Obama's been a little better on appointing judges, but I mean, I think that the war on drugs, of course, has been a big factor in the erosion of civil liberties, and the Cold War was for a while, and it seemed like when that went away, maybe there would be a respite from that erosion of civil liberties, but the war on terror is kind of taken up right where the Cold War left off, and sometimes in some ways been worse, because it's not like a nation-to-nation struggle now. It's the enemy within, the lone wolf, and so there's a lot more justifications now. So the best antidote for the move to a police state is an informed public who cares about the issue, and I don't know exactly how informed the public is or how much they care. So I'll let you decide the answer to that question as to how optimistic we should be about what direction we're going towards a police state, or how successful we're going to be at stopping it. But I don't know. I guess it also depends on how many more big terrorist attacks there are. So let me see. The next question I had here from Pat's Rules 213. Do you agree with the people protesting that the minimum wage is too low? Should the minimum wage be increased or stay the same? Well, I think the minimum wage is too low. I don't really believe the studies that say that raising the minimum wage costs people jobs. I think that it's really only a marginal difference in the price of labor compared to, if they're looking for cheap labor, they've already moved those jobs out of the United States as it is, and I don't think it's a living wage. I think the minimum wage should be a living wage. And what does it come to? Is it like $11,000, or I can't even remember what the minimum wage comes to at a 40-hour work week, but it's some like insanely low amount. Especially in some parts of in some parts of the country more than others, but of course. In some states, the minimum wage is actually higher than the federal minimum wage, and so I guess that already answers that question. The minimum wage is too low. Last question I have that was asked before I was able to get screenshots from 487 Sean. What do you think of the actions of closing the embassies? Is it smoke and mirrors to deflect NSA spying or on Americans, or a real substantive threat? Well, I actually kind of addressed this in my last LiberalViewer Sunday Live clip roundup last Sunday, where I showed a couple clips. One was from the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. What's his name? Dutch Ruppersberger, I think, or Ruppersberger, something like that. And he's a Democrat who supports NSA spying, and he was saying, "Oh no, this is real." He was asked that on the show. and he said this is not a distraction. This was real, and it's a big thing. And I didn't, that wasn't very reassuring to hear someone who's a big advocate of NSA spying say that. But then I also showed a clip from Barton Gellman, who's a journalist who is one of the journalists who Edward Snowden leaked his material to. It's Glenn Greenwald who works for The Guardian, and then Barton Gellman, who works for The Washington Post and Time Magazine and some foundation whose name I can never remember. But so he said that he thought it also wasn't just a distraction, this latest threat across the Middle East, because they're expending so much political. They're taking a lot of heat for it, and they're doing. There's definitely something there. But then on the other hand, I saw this discussion on one of the last several episodes of The Young Turks on current TV the other day, because I guess they're going back to web only with Al Jazeera America taking over that station. But they were talking about how some of the stuff that was associated with this terror threat is stuff that's been around for a long time, like the surgically implanted bombs. If you watched my LiberalViewer Sunday live clip roundup, I showed something about that and talked about that a little bit. How they're saying that there's some bomb maker in Yemen who can surgically implant bombs, and that's a story that's been around for a while. But to make this threat look a little more threatening, they may have added that in. Yeah, I think that some of this may be played up. I don't think the threat itself is made up, but I think that some of the ways it's being played up may be a way to distract from that, and also from the story that broke around the same time that this threat came out about how they've been scrubbing some of this NSA information and giving it to local law enforcement, like drug enforcement, and then they make up some fake story as to how they came up with the tip or whatever. And that was a pretty damning story, and that didn't get a lot of play because of this terror threat. So that also, I think, could be part of it. So let's see. I think I had oh no, I already answered all the questions here. Let me take a quick sip of water here, and then let me go into the comment section here. It looks like we've got about 40 people watching here, so that's worth looking here to take questions on. Let me see what I've got here in the comment section. View all comments, and Andrew Blumenfeld says, don't forget to say Marco Rubio. That's right. Every time let me see if I can, as long as, I didn't add this in, but as long as you mention it, I should add this in here. Where's the, as long as I'm actually kind of thirsty. This is from the Colbert Report. I mentioned this on the last LiberalViewer Wednesday, that every time I take a drink, I want to get the Marco Rubio meme going, because that's what he's most known for to the general public, is taking that drink during his response to the State of the Union. And it looks like the Colbert Report has something to go here. Let me show you. Don't want to loop this, but I'll just play from start, and here we go.
Rubio, Mr. Thirsty.
So, thank you. And the first time I played that, for some reason I called him Mario Rubio 10 times, which I'm still kind of embarrassed about calling him Mario Rubio. So it's obviously Senator Marco Rubio. So let's see. Let's see. Pat Rules 213 says the polarization is caused by the Democrat and Republican two-party dictatorship. Well, I've actually talked about how I think the two-party system drives people to be centrist, and I think that is also true. Let's see. The MP says, has Obama had the most opposition ever? He seems to have had a hard time getting anything done. Is this purely due to his race? If he was white, would he get such a hard time? Seems that way to the UK. Well, first of all, I think that Obama has gotten the worst time, but it's because he's just the last president in some ways, because it's been something that's been building through several presidents. There was a lot of irrational hatred of the Clintons back when Clinton was president, and I'd even say there was irrational hatred of George W. Bush, although there was also a lot of, I try not to hate. I try to come up with reasonable opposition, but there was certainly a lot of grounds for reasonable opposition to George W. Bush. But I'd say the biggest thing that has been a problem that's been building up every president for the last several presidents is the use of the filibuster in the Senate. There's nothing in the U.S. Constitution that says that there has to be 60 votes to get a bill passed in the Senate. There are certain very discrete items that require a 2/3 vote, like passing a treaty and confirmation of, I'd have to look at do I have my I've got my Constitution right here. I'd have to look at it somewhere in Article 1 is the legislative branch, and, well, whatever. You don't need the specifics, but there are several discrete issues that require a 2/3 vote from the Senate, I think removing the president. And other than that, there's nothing in the Constitution that requires more than a majority vote to pass anything. But there's been this, the history of the Senate and the practice and the tradition of the Senate has been to allow these filibusters that, at least, historically, you actually had to stand and talk like that woman did in the Texas legislature to try to stop that abortion bill, if you saw that. And now they have these non-speaking filibusters, and where they just have to give their intent to not stop debate. They have a cloture vote, and if it doesn't get 60 votes, then they can't bring it up for a vote on the merits of the bill, and that the use of the filibuster is has been worse in the Obama administration than any previous administration. But that was also true of George W. Bush, and also true of Bill. I think it's been building for several administrations, and it's part of the dysfunctionality. And they've been talking about changing those rules, and I hope they do change them, although not necessarily the way they were supposed to. They were considering changing them a couple weeks ago by just a majority vote, but actually to change the rules at the beginning of the Congress, so that because that's happened before. It used to be it required 67 votes, and they brought it down to 60. And I think that they should They should make it apply more narrowly, or at least require people to actually stand up and do a live filibuster. So I guess that's kind of a long answer to that question. Mutex50 says the California primary should use approval voting to get the top two. That way you get the two very best instead of guys that got the top two due to vote splitting. Yeah, I think approval voting is where you get to vote for your first choice and your second choice and your third choice, and then they add up all the choices. I'm not sure. I may not be explaining that right, but the video that I was commenting on was called Unintended Consequences, and all of these changes. It's kind of hard to say what the consequences are going to be until you actually implement them, and they often have these unintended consequences. So I'm always kind of skeptical, but I'm open-minded but skeptical, I would say. Someone speaking, Mr. Thirsty there. Someone posted that. I definitely like LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup better, because I don't like listening to myself talk for 30 minutes straight, or I like talking and showing a clip and talking and showing a clip. And let's see, Ted, I'm going to answer one or two more questions here. Ted Filmmaker says, LV, you mentioned you are in favor of campaign finance reform, and I was wondering if constitutional amendment folks should focus on campaign finance reform instead. The answer to that question, yes. But you probably want more than that. And I would say that, I was just talking about unintended consequences, and I am eventually going to make this video about why a constitutional amendment or a constitutional convention is a bad idea. I've never seen the text of a campaign finance, a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United that doesn't seem to have all sorts of unintended consequences built in, especially for freedom of the press, corporations, non-profit corporations. I mean, I eventually going to make a video about this. I've been promising it for a while, and I think this may be the month. But I think public financing of campaigns and that kind of campaign finance reform is much more reasonable, much more doable, and probably will, and hasn't been tried yet. It's a less radical step that's never really been tried, and so I do believe that people who are interested in campaign finance reform should focus their efforts there, even at least there first, even if they want to go further. Let's see. Michael Myers, Texas. I would like to know your opinion about why the right wing has gone out of control, right, and the left has become more in the middle of the spectrum. Apologize if I misspelled. Well, I guess that depends on your point of view, but I'd say the country has moved more to the right. I think it has something to do with two things move countries to the right, which is feeling lack of security in terms of military threats or violence or whatever, and then feeling lack of security economically. And the United States has been undergoing economic insecurity for decades now, where the middle class is being squeezed, and also this whole terrorism thing from 9/11 on, and even in the Cold War, were both used to move the country to the right. Economic deprivation can I should say that I think that one can move people more that can polarize people in both directions. Some people, I'm not sure that there isn't more of a radical left in recent years than in the past. I just don't think that they get a lot of they don't get a lot of airtime in the corporate media. I think that some people in the media are more willing to give people in the far right airtime than on the far left, but people in the far right also don't get a lot of airtime. The people, the corporate centrists get most of the airtime in the corporate media. Isn't really surprising. So let's see, one or two more questions here. Visnik asks, why do you end your videos with YouTube, you decide? It reminds me of how media organizations give only the facts and purport not to position themselves on issues. Well, that's something I came up with like in July 2006 and have just kept forever. My original meaning, first, it's kind of a parody or an allusion to the Fox News slogan, because a lot of my videos are, we report, you decide. And so instead of a lot of my videos deconstruct what's going on Fox News, and I use YouTube as a verb there to sort of, what I thought YouTube was at the time in 2006 was the ability of people to take video, analyze it, and give their opinion. That's what I mean when I say YouTube. I give you the facts, I give you my opinion, and you decide, because that's what I think YouTubing is, or at least what I thought it was in 2006. So when I say YouTube, I don't say I'm just giving the facts. I'm also giving my analysis, which is going to involve my opinion. So let's see, I think I'm well over 30 minutes now, and I'm getting extra thirsty. So I'll play
Rubio, Mr. Thirsty.
Mr. Thirsty one more time. Take a drink. I think I got all the clips for this video. A lot of people sent me that Reza Aslan interview on Fox News from their religion reporter Lauren Graham, and it was this awful interview. And I wasn't really going to do anything on the video itself or that interview itself, because I thought it was pretty self-explanatory. There wasn't that much I could add to it. But then when I saw the way Fox News reacted to the reaction to that interview, where they defended it, there I thought there was something I could say and sort of a bigger point I can make about Fox News. And I think I'm going to be making a video called, let me see, in fact, I think I have it written down here somewhere. Let me see real quick if I can what's the? Yeah, I think it's going to be called Fox News Reza Aslan interview defense misses fact value distinction. I don't know. That seems like it might be a little esoteric for a title. I'm thinking that I may use a clip from the October 2012 Bill O'Reilly Jon Stewart debate with some of his famous talk about Bullshit Mountain and how he was calling O'Reilly the mayor of Bullshit Mountain, and Fox News was basically Bullshit Mountain, and he was talking about the how, and it also goes back to the Stephen Colbert truthiness idea that the way you feel about things is more important than the facts, and that's kind of what I mean by the fact value distinction. And I think there were some things in the way, especially this kind of stooge from the Media Research Center, Brent Bozell was defending Fox News's interview of Reza Aslan. Is definitely worth the video. So I just wanted, before I get off here and stop the broadcast, I wanted to let you know real quick that that's probably going to be the next upcoming video. I appreciate all of you who joined me for LiberalViewer First Wednesday, and also anyone who is watching recorded. Keep watching. I'm hoping to have that next video up sometime. I have a ACLU monthly board meeting tomorrow, so I probably won't get much work. So maybe on Friday or Saturday, I'll be able to get that video up for you. And otherwise, join me again on Sunday for LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. And enjoy the rest of your week. And thank you.